Well, Helen Zille has been a number of times our first. I can remember her giving the first fireside chat at a Biz News conference that went double the 45 minutes that it should have been. It went for an hour and a half, and you could have heard a pin drop. And she's also been the first in opening a number of our Biz News conferences, and hopefully we'll be doing that again in March next year. But she's also today gracing our brand new studio in Hermanus. Thank you, Helen. Lovely talking with you. We didn't go full live, but we might have a few of our community members coming in and posing some questions of their own. You, yeah, you weren't at BNC9, and there was a reason for that. Um, I didn't want. I know you're very busy with everything that's going on in Johannesburg, and we had Jordan Hill-Lewis opening the conference this time. But there were quite a lot of skepticism about the ability of, if you were to become mayor, and that's still an if at the moment, the ability to actually turn Joburg around. I know you follow these things closely. How are you feeling about the skepticism that was delivered there?
Well, obviously, it's sensible to be cautious given how broken Joburg is. But I'm always fascinated in politics how the debate moves on and the people who are always critics find a new reason to be critical. So let me just give you the miracle of the DA being the biggest party in Joburg and in Tshwane and in Ekurhuleni. If you'd said that a year ago, no one would have believed you. That is how much of a stretch that was to beat the ANC in their heartland in Gauteng, and to beat them substantially was never considered possible. Now that we're doing it, people are saying, well, it's not going to be possible for you to get an overall majority, and well, even if you get there, you won't be able to fix it. Come on, guys. We've achieved bloody miracles that no one seems to understand the minute they happen because they're on to the next, in their theoretical view, impossibility. If we'd listened to these guys, we never would have kept on trucking as the DA in South Africa. We couldn't win Cape Town, then we did. Then we did it in the Western Cape. Then, oh, well, you'll be always confined to the Western Cape. And, well, that's why we need Cape Exit, because you'll never be able to beat the ANC anywhere else. And then we moved out of the province. And we're now in a very good position in Gauteng. No one ever looks back and says, my goodness, how did you do it? And if they do, they only look back and say, oh, well, it was because the ANC was so useless. Otherwise, you would never have done it. So there's never any sense of what we are achieving because we're doing something right. Anything that we succeed in doing is always explained by what everybody else did wrong, never by what we did right. And I'm getting a bit tired of that, Alec, to be quite frank. Yes, it is good to be cautious about Joburg. Joburg is deeply broken thanks to the choices that the majority of Joburg voters have made over the last 30 years. The majority of voters got us into that position, not the DA. And we've been fighting that position for 30 years, and eventually we're getting across. And there are some know-it-alls who say, oh, well, why did it take you so long? To break through the racial and ethnic mold and convince people to vote for a party based on good governance, values, and principles is an enormous achievement on our continent. In fact, when Henry Kissinger came to see me in 2010, he said, I need to speak to you. He came here to watch the World Cup, not to visit me. But while he was here in Cape Town, he wanted to see me. And he said, the reason I want to see you is because I have always been on the very firm view that in Africa, it's not possible to build a majority party on the basis of principles, of values, and of policies. But the DA in South Africa is proving me wrong. What are you doing? And then we had a long and very fascinating chat about it. So,
Why did he say that? Why did a guy like Kissinger, that sounds incredibly racist.
it's not racist for obvious reasons, Alec. I mean, people stick to, it's not racist to point out that across Africa, it has been very, very difficult for parties to move outside an ethnic frame and build a party across racial and across ethnic lines. It's an objective fact. I mean, look at if Obama, who could get elected in America, had stood in Kenya. His father was a member of a minority ethnic group. He could never have been elected there. Just fact. And Kenya is one of the poster children for democracy on our continent. You must understand the fact of Africa's history, that the borders are completely wrong across Africa because they were done by Europeans, another fact. And people are as different as the Greeks are from the Germans and are put together in one country. In Europe, they all fought it out until they had their own countries. In Africa, fortunately, that hasn't happened. And people have come to accept borders rather than having constant wars over them, although that doesn't apply to every place, like, for example, Western Sahara and Morocco, or, for example, Sudan and South Sudan. Those are all legacies of that period of drawing lines across Africa. In Europe, they're still fighting about borders. You can see what's happening now in Spain, in Ceuta, and in Morocco, and you can see what's happening in Ukraine and in Russia. They're still fighting about borders. So there's nothing racist about saying that ethnic groups band together. And the most amazing thing about Europe is that they can't get it together. They can only get parties based on principles and values and policies because most of them are of the same ethnic group. And now that the composition is changing so fundamentally of the populations there, you can see what a tailspin they're in. They can see what a tailspin they're in.
So in a way, here in South Africa, we seem to be a little bit ahead of the curve as far as the way that people are viewing politics is concerned. We might be moving beyond the African norm. I
Not the
suppose
African,
that's the point.
the norm everywhere. I mean, Alec, I've said this for years and years and years. South Africa, if we can form a party in a multi-ethnic plural society, more complex than most anywhere else in the world, if we can do it here, that people vote on values, principles, policies, and ideas rather than race or ethnicity, we will really be the first in the world. And I've also said again and again and again that that is our mission in the world. Because as you can see now, there's a movement of people that is going to be incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to stop. Trump came to power on immigration, identity politics, and inflation. But immigration was a very big one because suddenly people are saying who's going to be the majority, who's going to be the minority, based on all of the fault lines that we have to work across in South Africa. In South Africa, we're saying let's build a majority on ideas, on values, on principles. That's what the DA is saying. And Henry Kissinger said, I said, no party could get that right, not only in Africa. I mean, it's fine when you've got a tiny minority or small minorities in overwhelmingly majority countries that can argue with each other because there's a dominant ethnic group around values, principles, and policies. But when that changes, when that demography changes, people get into a complete tailspin, as we've seen. And that brought Trump to power. So you've got to really understand very clearly that it's got nothing to do with racism or Africa. It's the norm everywhere else in the world. And we are saying in South Africa, we can't unscramble the past. I mean, there were two homelands that Britain gave independence to, three actually. One was Lesotho, the other one was Swaziland, and the other one was Botswana. But for the rest, South Africa is one country, and following through that British policy of giving independence to ethnic groups and ethnic homelands wasn't followed through and couldn't be followed through, and resulted in a very unjust attempt to follow through, which is a tragedy. But Lesotho, it's bizarre that it's an independent country, frankly, and ditto Swaziland. So, or Eswatini, as it's called today. So, what can I say? We are treading a path that no other country has trodden in a context which is not the birthplace of multi party liberal democracy. And we're getting it right. At what point is the world going to see that, let alone our critics in South Africa?
What about Joburg itself? Because you mentioned, and it's a really good point that we need to see things in context. You go back a year, and it was almost a bit of a moonshot that you were attempting to become the next mayor. You've handled your campaign brilliantly. Everybody who knows politics or observes and comments on politics has been saying that. But is this kind of a one-off? Is this because Helen Zille knows how to get elected? Or is it really the ideas that you're talking about that is finally getting through to our greater population? Or is it really just because Joburg's so broken that they want people would have a go at anything, really?
Well, you see, that's what our critics would like to explain it by. Oh, the Joburg's so broken, anybody could stand. You could put up a garden fork and they'd get elected. That is such nonsense. I mean, the point is there are 500 political parties, most of which are black led. Why is the DA being chosen as the alternative? Why? Why? It's a miracle in its own right. Just ask those questions, the deeper questions, Alec. Those are really important to ask. And I've been in politics for 60 years now, for 60 years. And I've been in the very early campaigns to get Selma Brody elected to the Johannesburg City Council, to get Rene de Villiers elected to Parliament. I've been embedded in those campaigns for 60 years. And I know a little bit about political campaigning. But it's not only about me. The party has systems and ways. It's definitely not only about me. I could not do it without the DA. And that is the big problem with many leaders in the DA. They somehow think that they've done it on their own. We don't do it on our own. We've got a massive machine built over many years that I hoped I made some contribution to building. And that is the party that carries us all. And the minute you think you're bigger than the DA, you're in big trouble. But the point is that we are emerging as the alternative, which is fantastic. And it gives South Africa real prospects of being confident that we will make it as a successful constitutional democracy with growing prosperity that will be a net that will lift everybody. A growing country that's more and more prosperity for all. And that concept was considered totally impossible given our metrics. So we're doing that, Alec, and you should be damn confident about the future on that basis. But you're right, we can't only leave it to a couple of people who are leading this charge. We have to build new leaders. And so look at our new leadership. I'm the anomaly. I'm the outlier. I'm the 75-year-old duck who still has a lot in her because with the women in my family, I'm sort of like a mid-career professional right now, having a midlife crisis. They get very old and they keep their marbles, fortunately, the women in my family. And so I hope that I'm on that track. And I love working and I love the prospect of keeping on. But they make space for me because we don't discriminate on the basis of age, fortunately, in the DA. But all the young people coming through on merit, not because they're young, look how young they are, and look how vibrant they are, and look how competent they are, and look how great they are.
But
That's
they're
what should
also
get.
taking a lot of they're taking a lot of strain. I had a fascinating interview with Mark Burke on Friday, and I know he's one of the new generation that's coming through. Really smart guy, doctorate from Cambridge, almost an anomaly as well when you think of Parliament. But it's like there's a witch hunt against him. Ian Cameron, my goodness, the pain that he's been subjected to. So it's I think anybody listening to what you're saying will get terribly excited about the way you're seeing the world. But the people like Ian and Mark are putting themselves out there, attracting a lot of attention and a lot of bullets, and yet uh, new people, the next generation who would like to join those two, perhaps will look at that and say, maybe a quieter life is for me.
Well, if that's how you think, then you must go into journalism, not into politics. And you can sit there in journalism and criticize everybody else all the time and never actually do anything yourself. But let me say this. There are tough people in the world who are up for a fight. And no one has been hammered in politics, literally no one more than I have. I mean, my own party turned against me. And it was the most important political fight I have ever had in my life, was to prevent the DA adopting wokeness. And it was well on its way to doing that with the support of the choir of most journalists. Not you, Alec, but for the most. And it was the most important fight I've ever had. Because if we didn't win that fight within the DA, we could never put the party and the country on the route to getting a stable, non-racial democracy. Now, we're certainly not there yet, but we're a lot further than we were even 2 years ago. And that takes grit and it takes toughness, Alec. And I know that Mark Burke, who is very smart and I believe very ethical, can do that. I mean, what I've heard is nonsense of people saying, oh, he took 4 billion rand out of the country. And remember what we could have done, how many houses we could have built. And people haven't even got a clue what this debate is about. And that it was arbitrage on the value of Bitcoin abroad and the value of Bitcoin at home. And that he was taking no money out of the country, he was bringing it back and earning returns for his clients. But whether or not the Reserve Bank thinks that he used the gap in the law for a company to use the overseas allowance rather than individuals is a question the law must be clarified on. But the nonsense going around about how he was corrupt to the tune of 4 billion rand and he took it out of the country and people don't know what's going on. And they are easily jump to conclusions. And the more important thing, Alec, is that it's very tough on people like Mark. But I have no doubt that Mark can take it. I think Mark has the resilience that's required and the intelligence that's required. He doesn't feel sorry for himself. He doesn't think that he should be above the pummeling in politics, which is inevitable. If you want a quiet life, don't go into politics. Ian Cameron, boy, he can take it. He can take it, and he gives it back, warts and all. I can take it. That's why I titled my book, Not Without a Fight. You're never going to get to the end result without a big battle. But some things are worth fighting for. And Joburg is one of them.
Healthcare matters, but what matters most?
Having cover for the people who keep this business going.
Bonitas is there for you when it counts. Bonitas, medical aid for South Africa. Visit bonitas.co.za and find your plan.
Okay, so let's move on to Joburg. What happens if you get 45% plus, and then together with other friendly members of the coalition, you can put together this governing coalition? At that point, how are you going to, you said before, you can't do it on your own. How are you going to bring in the talent around you? Are you going to get people from outside of Joburg? Is it just going to be within Joburg? Have you got any ideas on how you're going to do this?
Well, firstly, we started this more than a year ago by calling for nominations. And then the 2 years prior to that, I spent running around Joburg finding the best possible people we could to apply to be councillors. And you've got to have a good crop of councillors. And I believe that in the main we have, and our processes have worked. It's quite amazing to me. You know, we've got strong internal processes, and the results are not popular with everyone. Of course, they're not going to be popular with everyone. For example, I'm sure there are people who would have liked another mayoral candidate. But because we have strong processes that work fairly, people accept the outcome even if they don't like it. Look what happens in the ANC. They first promised a mayoral candidate for Joburg in May. Then they promised one in June. Then they promised one in July. Then they even arranged a huge event to announce it in August, which was cancelled on the morning of the event. And now they've promised one for September. What does that say about their internal capacity to take decisions through due process? It tells you that the place is a train wreck. And they're never, ever going to get Joburg right if they can't even select a candidate to be the mayor. So, you know, this is what you're dealing with on the other side. And I hope people are seeing that. So what can I say? I mean, we've got that, and then I think you'll be amazed. You'll be amazed how many people want to come and help us save Joburg. I've had people contact us from abroad. The CDE apparently has done a massive research project on why it is so critical to save Joburg if we want to save South Africa. 100% right. The three metros in Gauteng are make or break, and we could be the biggest party in all three of them. Do you know what a watershed that is for South Africa? But most of the political analysts will say, oh, well, that was quite obvious. We could see that coming because, the ANC is so useless and they would have voted for a cockroach rather than have the ANC there. Clueless verby.
Frans Cronje actually highlighted this back at the time that you announced your candidature before you'd even been
The
appointed.
party announced my candidature, I didn't.
Okay. But he said that this could be a watershed for the country as well, and particularly for the DA. And I think from this conversation, it sounds to me like you think the message of values is actually starting to land, perhaps first in Joburg, and would you see it extending to the rest of the country?
Well, it's extending very fast to the rest of the country. I mean, I've looked at our latest polling. We could get the mayoralty of eThekwini, that's Durban, not because we're going to be the biggest party in eThekwini, but we may be the biggest party in the coalition that's put together afterwards. That'll be massive. And then, but also you must think that MK could also win eThekwini, which would be tragic for eThekwini, but it would certainly show the difference between where the MK governs and where the DA governs. If people want a contrast at the end of 5 years, they'll certainly see it. If the voters are so stupid to allow that to happen, well, then they will certainly feel the pain and they will see the contrast. But look, Gauteng is the economic hub of South Africa by far. And Joburg is the strongest city economically. It's still got 70% of corporate headquarters and 16% of GDP in one city. I mean, it's huge. And that is why so many people who love South Africa and want South Africa to work say to me, we're in. Just go and will, we're in. And I'm very, very encouraged by that.
Is that the message you would have given at BNC9 if you'd been there and you'd heard the critics?
Well, I would have said, it's very easy to criticize. Why don't you get in and help us? Why don't you do your thing? There are many companies who are helping and they're doing great work, but it's, very easy to be critical. And what is the option, Alec? This is what I would have said. Johannesburg exists. It is in a very deep hole. It is deeply broken. What are the options for its future? Either we let it become a completely collapsed city, or we try and fix it. And we've opted for the latter. So you can all sit there like the Hades choir and say, oh, this can't be done, and rent your garments and tear your hair out. Or you can say, let's give it a shot.
How are you feeling right now about getting elected? What's your, to begin with, you had a heck of a lot of work to do. You've done a lot of that work. Where are you sitting now, given it's just a few months away from the big day?
Well, a few months is a long time in politics, a hell of a long time in politics. Anything can go wrong. And they do. I mean, people take things out of context all the time. They try to present it as racist or sexist or ageist or whatever you like. And then the media loves a manufactured outrage crisis, so they'll fan it along. I know how it goes. I've been around this bush more than once. But the point is that we're going to try and keep on track. We're going to try and keep on track for as long as we can, and right up to the last moment, and we won't rest until the very, very last vote is counted. We're going to meet with the IEC shortly because I'm very, very worried, given my last experience in Nelson Mandela Bay, about the way the IEC managed the election there, that I'm extremely worried that if the same trends arise here in Joburg, it'll be difficult for us to say the election is free and fair. So I definitely want to speak to them to make sure that they've got plans to avoid the chaos that I saw in some places in Nelson Mandela Bay last time in 2021 when I was managing the election there.
I have noticed that the DA is putting up, or it said that it's putting up candidates in every ward around the country. How different is that from 5 years ago?
I am not in a position anymore, because I'm not the chair of the Federal Council anymore, to say that for sure we've got a candidate in every ward. But I do know that we have a candidate in every ward, in every metro in Gauteng. And the point is that it gives people the option to vote for good government, economic growth, and progress, and non-racialism, and the rule of law, and values and principles. We want everybody to have a chance to vote for that option, so that no one can say, well, we didn't have a chance to vote for that vision. We're giving you the chance. We've put an incredible amount of work into ensuring that we find you a reasonable candidate. No, we're not perfect by any means. We haven't got brilliant candidates everywhere, but we do very intense performance management and monitoring. And many people will find that because their last ward councillor didn't measure up, we've changed them. And we've changed them without a war, and DA people aren't getting murdered like the ANC people are in Knysna and in various other places, because we have processes that do things properly. And most people will see that they've got a competent ward councillor, and they can also see that those ward councillors will be monitored. And we have done our best to get the best possible mayoral candidates we can find. We didn't always get it right, I don't think. But, when I spent 1.5 years trying to find a mayoral candidate potential for Joburg. Doesn't mean to say that our caucus hasn't got mayoral potential. Yes, they do, but we want strong competition, and we want people who know how to turn things around, because turning around a massive city is an unbelievably difficult job. And so we wanted the turnaround specialists from the private sector, and we went looking for them everywhere. People have a lot to say, but when I say to them, will you please put up your hand and come and do this, then they've got every reason in the book why they can't. And when you see what a mayor earns in comparison with all of those guys and what they're earning, they say to me, are you joking? Are you actually joking?
National service, and you've had a life of national service, and you're continuing to have national service.
It's been no sacrifice for me. I've enjoyed every moment of it, and no one forced me to do it. I've loved every moment of it. I also wanted to reply to Corné Mulder, by the way. So you're going to have to stretch this a little bit further, I'm afraid, Alec.
There's no stretch. You carry on. What was it that Corné said that you didn't like?
In one of your clips that Corné was saying that we could have had a stable government of honourable people if the DA hadn't been so tough in the last round of negotiations. Let me tell you, that is a reinvention of history. There was no way we could have had a good, stable, honourable government on the result that the voters gave us in the last election. And if they give us a similar result in this election, I'm not even going to try and negotiate a coalition. We're going to go straight into opposition. What were the facts? We got 26% of the vote. Now, you've got to get over 50% of the seats in council, which means over 50% of the vote comprising different parties. To get that, we had to have a 9-party coalition. That is insane. And in a country like South Africa, it's never coalition negotiations, it's extortion negotiations. Because people are not saying, how can we get a government plan of action? How can we make sure we succeed in achieving 4 or 5 key objectives over the term? It's which positions can I get? And how many of my mates can get into the key positions? And then the party that gives you the most is the party that you go for. And then you learn very quickly how to extort. So you say, party X offered us this, how much are you offering us? If you're not offering us more, then we leave the coalition. And that's exactly what happened. We put together a 9-party coalition, which I thought would break down in 3 months. And lo and behold, we had 9 parties. So you've got to accommodate 9 parties in a position that they are satisfied with, right? And these are tiny parties that often can't get 2-3% of the vote. But they demand their pound of flesh. And they want position X and Y and Q and P. And that's the only thing people want to negotiate about, not a plan of action, not a governance strategy, nothing. And then the PA came in and they had 1 mayoral committee seat. which out of 9 parties and a maximum of 10 mayoral committee positions is a lot for a party that only got 8 out of 270 seats. So they got a make-up position. The ANC said, come over to us, we'll give you 2. So what did they do? They went over to the ANC, brought down our government, brought down Popalatse. Next thing, they come back to us and they say, you know what, we'll come back to you if you give us 3. And I said, forget. You're a party with 8 seats out of 270. And you want 3 out of 10 mayoral committee positions because you've got a swing vote. And I said, no, on other grounds as well. I mean, Kenny Kunene was their main Kunene. Look what's happened. Kenny Kunene's been in charge of Johannesburg Roads Agency, collapsing bridges, destroyed roads, a closed asphalt plant, complete bankruptcy, no money to put into their vehicles, an absolute travesty, and PA cadres deployed everywhere, presiding over this collapse. That's what we got. And if we'd agreed to the 3 people, like some commentators who were very vocal on BizNews wanted us to do, we would have 3 portfolios like that, and we would have presided over it. There's a point that you have to say, if the voters don't give us enough votes, we go into opposition. And if they want to vote for parties that we know are in there to loot, and not in there to put the best people in place so that we can fix the place, then let's rather be in opposition until the voters understand that if they want us to fix things, they have to vote for us.
Would you stay in Joburg if you were in opposition? Would you leave the charge?
People ask me that question because they think they're testing my commitment to Joburg. Let me say very simply, my commitment to Joburg can't be questioned. I've left my husband, my sons, and most critically, my grandchildren in Cape Town to relocate to Joburg. I'm now living in Joburg. I'm now settled in Joburg. I will, if I'm elected, I've said I'll stay the term. I'll stay there and I will be there and I'll be here for Joburg and I will work day and night to try and fix Joburg, and I will try also to persuade my husband to come and live with me here. I don't know which one will be harder, fixing Joburg or persuading my husband. It's a toss-up. But nevertheless, I'm totally committed. But then the voters have to be committed as well. And if they don't give us enough votes, it doesn't call my commitment into question. It calls the voters' commitment to Joburg into question.
Got it. Helen Zille is the mayoral candidate for the Democratic Alliance. I'm Alec Hogg from biznews.com.
Thanks, Alec.
Start your day a step ahead. BizNews Insider. It delivers the business stories that matter every morning straight to your inbox, sharp, fast, and free. Subscribe now.